Three actors from this show died at the same age. Two were the leads. Their most prominent recurring castmate became the third. The number 54 is the strangest statistic in the show's history, and nobody has explained it. Number 1 on this list is Michael Landon, who played Jonathan Smith, the probationary angel walking the country in soft denim and a softer voice. Landon did not just star in Highway to Heaven, he created it, produced it, directed most of its episodes, wrote many of them, and owned the entire show outright through Michael Landon Productions. NBC paid the production fee and bought the broadcast rights, and everything else flowed back to him. By the time he died, multiple estimates placed his estate at $40 million. A figure the financial profile published by Pretend has noted would exceed $90 million in today's terms. Almost none of that came from a salary. It came from ownership. Across 30 years on NBC, the man used every contract negotiation along the way to build a position no other family drama lead of his era ever achieved. He was the architect of his own fortune in an industry that mostly paid actors and forgot about them. As Jonathan Smith, the warmth on his face carried the show's faith. Off-camera, the same man chain-smoked and drank heavily, lived through 3 marriages, fathered 9 children between biological and adopted, and survived a childhood with a mother who threatened suicide and once tried to drown herself with him in the room. In April 1991, he cut short a Utah ski trip because of sharp abdominal pain, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at Cedars-Sinai within days, and was given 3 months to live. His final Tonight Show appearance was used to confirm the diagnosis on his own terms before the tabloids could distort it. Landon died at home in Malibu on July 1, 1991, with his wife Cindy at the bedside. He was 54 years old, and an industry that had relied on his warmth for 3 decades was suddenly without it. The man who played Mark Gordon, the bearded ex-cop who served as Jonathan's earthly counterweight, was Victor French, and Landon almost did not get him cast at all. NBC executives wanted a younger, more conventionally attractive actor in the role. Landon refused and held the line. French told the Washington Post afterward that the part had changed his career and that Landon was, in his own words, his angel. The two men had been friends since 1969, when French guest-starred on Bonanza. By the time Highway to Heaven premiered in 1984, they had already worked together across 2 long-running shows. French appeared in all 111 episodes and directed approximately 12 of them, earning director fees on top of his acting compensation. He never owned a piece of any show he starred on, and that single fact is the structural difference between his estate and Landon's. Off-camera, French was the quiet, reclusive opposite of his partner. Cindy Landon described the two men as crazy about each other. In March of 1989, while filming the live-action segments of an animated film called Rock-a-Doodle in Dublin, French was diagnosed with advanced lung cancer. The diagnosis came 3 months after he had wrapped his final Highway to Heaven episode, and 3 months before he would die. Victor French had been a chain smoker for most of his life. Death came at Sherman Oaks Community Hospital in Los Angeles on June 15, 1989, 2 months before the show's final episode aired. The age on his death certificate was 54. 2 years later, Michael Landon would die at exactly that same age, of an entirely different cancer. As a final, irreverent gesture, French had arranged for an airplane to fly over his memorial, trailing a humorous farewell banner that was very much in character for the man, even if not for the angel he had played. At number 3, we have Lou Ayres, who appeared across multiple Highway to Heaven seasons in 3 different small roles, most memorably as Harry Haynes in The Right Thing, the elderly grandfather being placed into a nursing home by his own son. Ayres carried the moral weight of an actor who had been working since the silent era, and he brought a quiet dignity to a recurring role on a show that he must have known would be among his final screen credits. Born in Minneapolis in 1908, he was a star of the 1930 Best Picture winner, All Quiet on the Western Front, before he was 22. The studio system put him in 9 Dr. Kildare features for MGM through 1942, and then his career ended overnight. He had registered as a conscientious objector to the Second World War on religious and pacifist grounds, and the studios punished him for it. MGM canceled his contract, Theaters refused to show his films. Ayers served the entire war as a non-combat medic in the South Pacific and earned 3 battle stars while his industry treated him as a traitor. Hollywood let him back in slowly. The 1948 film Johnny Belinda earned him a Best Actor Oscar nomination, the closest thing the system had to offer in the way of a public apology. Ayers lived to 88, married 3 times: Lola Lane, Ginger Rogers, and finally Diana Hall, with whom he stayed for 32 years and had his only son. A man who made a moral stand that cost him his peak earning years, who had been buried by his own studio, and who refused to apologize for it for the rest of his life. That is who Highway to Heaven hired to play a grandfather being thrown out of his own family. Ayers died of natural causes in Los Angeles 2 days before New Year's Eve in 1996. He had outlived the studio that destroyed him by 62 years, which was probably the longest, quietest revenge in 20th century Hollywood. The next cast member on this list also belonged to the studio era and earned an Academy Award nomination of her own. Long before Highway to Heaven came calling for the kind of role only she could carry. Coming in at 4 is Dorothy McGuire, who played Jane Thompson, the former wife of Jonathan Smith, in the 2-part Season 4 episode We Have Forever in 1988. The casting was an event for anyone who had been watching American films since the 1940s. McGuire had earned a Best Actress Oscar nomination for Gentleman's Agreement in 1947, the film that won Best Picture, and she had carried A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, Old Yeller, and The Swiss Family Robinson across 4 decades of leading lady work. She was 71 when she walked onto a Highway to Heaven soundstage to play the woman Jonathan had loved when he was still alive, and she made the casting feel as inevitable as the season finale itself. The episode is widely considered among the strongest of the entire series. Her career off-camera was the kind of long, quiet success the studio era rarely allowed. She married Life magazine photographer and aviator John Swope in 1943, stayed married to him until his death in 1979, raised 2 children named Mary and Mark, and never remarried. A hip injury in 1990 effectively ended her acting career after one final television film. She remained out of the public eye for the next decade. McGuire died of heart failure on September 13, 2001, 2 days after the September 11th attacks. A coincidence that quietly absorbed her obituary into a national news cycle that had no room for the death of an Oscar nominee from another era. She was 85 years old. The angel husband she had played opposite in 1988 had been gone for 10 years by then, and the kind of Hollywood she had once been a leading lady of had been gone considerably longer. Anybody still watching can hit subscribe for more deep dives on the cast lists you grew up watching, because the next entry is one of the strangest deaths in the entire Highway to Heaven roster. Number 5 belongs to Ivor Barry, the Welsh character actor who played 3 different roles across Highway to Heaven: Dr. Erhart, Joseph, and Parks the Butler, including a memorable appearance in the Season 4 episode with Love, the Claus, the courtroom drama that put Santa Claus on trial. Barry was the kind of working actor who built an entire career out of being whoever the production needed that week, and he had been doing it since 1952. Born in Merthyr Tydfil, South Wales, in April 1919, he served 6 years as a British Royal Artillery officer during the Second World War, completed his studies at the University of Wales, and began his stage career there before moving to Canada in 1953 and to Hollywood in 1965. The film most younger audiences will recognize him from is Weird Science, the 1985 John Hughes hit, in which he played the grandfather to the characters performed by Bill Paxton and Elin Mitchell Smith. His television work included Bonanza, Bewitched, Hawaii Five-0, Mission Impossible, The $6 Million Man, Fantasy Island, The Partridge Family, The Rockford Files, and Punky Brewster. Married to Helen Joy Bramold until her death in 1991, he was survived by their daughter, the animation artist Bronwyn Barry, with whom he had a close and loving relationship. Barry retired in the mid-1990s and died of heart failure on December 12, 2006, at the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in Woodland Hills, age 87. He had been a working actor for over half a century, and he never once needed the camera to find him twice. 6th on this list is Margie Impert, who played Diane Wilson, Mark Gordon's cousin, and the romantic counterpart to a quadriplegic attorney named Scotty Wilson. across 5 to 6 episodes between 1985 and 1986. Impert had been working in television since 1964, when she joined the soap Another World as a teenager and stayed for over 150 episodes. Recurring work followed on Magnum PIMASH and a horror film called The Howling. Her Highway to Heaven role was the highest-profile recurring presence she ever had on a network drama, and the storyline her character anchored was one of the most quietly radical things American family drama had attempted in the 1980s. The romance arc between Diane and Scotty was loosely based on the real-life love story between James Trusch, the actor who played Scotty, and his wife Teresa. Michael Landon agreed to develop the storyline at Trusch's suggestion. Impert handled the assignment with the practiced control of someone who had been doing supporting work for over 20 years and understood that the way to honor a real-life romance about disability was to play it as a romance, not as a lesson. Diane Wilson was the woman who saw past a wheelchair and recognized a man. The actress who played her was the warmest recurring presence on a show built around two men, and she made the relationship feel as natural as anything else on television. As of this recording, Margie Impert is, by all available records, the only confirmed living member of the principal Highway to Heaven recurring cast. Diane Wilson loved Scotty Wilson before the world had words for the kind of love their relationship represented. Impert kept showing up for that role and made it look easy, which is almost always the hardest thing to do. The next cast member on this list is the third actor from Highway to Heaven to die at exactly the same age as the two leads. He played the most prominent recurring character on the show, and his death is the one that turns the curse into something the rational mind cannot quite explain. Two leads dying of cancer at the same age might be a coincidence. Three working performers from one show, all dead at exactly 54. That is something else. Next up is James Trusch, the man who played Scotty Wilson, the quadriplegic attorney who appeared across 3 seasons of Highway to Heaven and changed something about American television that almost nobody noticed at the time. Trusch did not just play a quadriplegic character. Off-camera, he was a C3 to C4 quadriplegic himself. At age 14, while attempting to attach an antenna to a homemade radio tower on his family's roof in Whittier, California, he made contact with a power line and absorbed approximately 240,000 volts of electricity. The contact fractured his neck and threw him from a 30-foot roof. Recovery took roughly a year in the hospital. Years afterward, he became the first quadriplegic actor admitted to the Screen Actors Guild, and the only person in Hollywood holding both SAG and Writers Guild membership while living with C3 to C4 quadriplegia. He earned a story credit on the Highway to Heaven episode his on-screen romance was based on, and he received the Michael Landon Award from the Media Access Office for his advocacy work. Hollywood never figured out how to keep using him afterward. Parts for quadriplegic actors barely existed. Trusch wrote the Christian film Color of the Cross in 2006 and created The Hollywood Quad, a sitcom pilot co-starring Bryan Cranston that never sold but eventually became a podcast. Death came at St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank on October 1, 2011. He was 54 years old at the time. That number is the reason this list exists. Michael Landon died at 54. Victor French died at 54. The most prominent recurring cast member on a show about angels and mortality also died at 54. And the only thing the 3 deaths share is that the bodies of 3 working men gave out far earlier than the statistics would predict for any of them. No medical theory connects a heavy smoker, a pancreatic cancer patient, and a man whose spinal cord was injured at 14. The number 54 is what it is. 3 actors from one show, all dead at 54. Drop a comment with which death hit you hardest: Landon, French, or Trusch. The character at the center of the show, the friend who carried the comedy, or the man who pushed open a door for disabled performers and never got to walk through it himself. Bill Irwin sits at number 8. He played Clarence Kelly and twice played Santa Claus on Highway to Heaven, including the Season 4 episode with Love the Claus, which staged a courtroom drama putting Santa Claus on trial. Irwin had been a professional actor since 1941. He served as a captain in the Air Force during the Second World War and returned to acting afterward without missing a beat. By the time he died, He had amassed close to 250 acting credits across 7 decades, which is the kind of working life almost nobody in Hollywood ever assembles. The role most people will remember him for is Sid Fields on Seinfeld, the cantankerous old man Jerry visits in the nursing home, which earned him a Primetime Emmy nomination in 1996 at the age of 81. Bigger projects in his filmography included Home Alone, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, The West Wing, The Golden Girls, Full House, and The Jeffersons. The man worked. Married to his wife Jean for over 50 years until her death in 2009, Irwin appeared in his final acting role at age 91 on a Season 2 episode of My Name is Earl. Death came at Studio City on December 29, 2010, 3 days short of his 96th birthday and 4 years short of his 100th. He had outlived almost every other principal Highway to Heaven cast member, which says something about the difference between a working actor who never picked up a habit that kills you and a leading man who did. Andy Romano comes in at number 9. He played Kaz, a recurring background presence across multiple Highway to Heaven episodes between 1985 and 1989. The role was small but consistent, the kind of supporting figure Landon liked to keep returning because it gave the world of the show texture between guest stars. Romano had spent the 1960s as a fixture of the teen beach movie genre, appearing in Beach Party, Pajama Party, Bikini Beach, Beach Blanket Bingo, How to Stuff a Wild Bikini, and The Ghost in the Invisible Bikini. The most widely seen role of his career came the year Highway to Heaven went off the air. He played first base coach Pepper Leach in the 1989 baseball comedy Major League. Supporting work in Bugsy, Under Siege, Eraser, and The Fugitive followed across the 1990s. His final credited acting role was a 2003 short film. After that, he stepped away from Hollywood entirely, moved to Washington State, and lived quietly outside the industry for almost 20 years before his death in March 2022 at age 85. Kaz turned up whenever the show needed someone familiar in the background. Romano spent 60 years being that person, and he retired to Washington State and lived quietly for 2 more decades, which is almost always the best ending a character actor can hope for. The final cast member on this list is the man whose face the audience would have recognized from a dozen films before Highway to Heaven ever called, and who walked away from the industry on his own terms. Closing out this list is Joe Dorsey, who played 3 different characters across the run of Highway to Heaven. Mr. Sinclair in the 2-part pilot episode in September 1984, Luke Morgan in the Season 3 episode Man to Man in 1986, and another Sinclair appearance in between. Born in Florida in 1932, Dorsey began acting in the Catskill Mountains summer stock circuit and earned an early piece of advertising history as the first official Marlboro Man, photographed for the original cigarette campaign before the role rotated to the long line of cowboys who would follow him. He performed off-Broadway in the 1960s production of Fortune and Menzies opposite Sal Mineo and a then-unknown Tommy Lee Jones. After relocating to Atlanta, Dorsey served as the first president of Georgia's Screen Actors Guild from 1977 to 1979, lobbying Hollywood productions to bring work to actors based outside Los Angeles. His film resume carried real weight. Norma Ray, opposite Sally Field, The Great Santini opposite Robert Duvall, War Games with Matthew Broderick, Real Genius with Val Kilmer, and the science fiction drama Brainstorm in 1983, where he played opposite Christopher Walken and Natalie Wood during the film, whose troubled production was interrupted by Wood's death. His wife, Sandra Dorsey, is also an actress and appeared alongside him in Grizzly and Norma Ray. His final film was Killing Midnight in 1997, directed by his son Alexander. Dorsey eventually retired from acting and reportedly settled on the coast of Colon, Republic of Panama, where the public record on him goes quiet. The first Marlboro Man, the lobbyist for Georgia actors, the small recurring face on Highway to Heaven, did exactly what most working actors hope to do at the end. He stopped, and he kept living. 111 episodes, 5 seasons, 3 principal actors who all died at 54, of 3 causes that share nothing but a number. Highway to Heaven sold the country a story about angels and lost 3 of its own.